They had it all: beauty, fame, and wealth that the world admired. On the red carpet, they shone like untouchable stars. But behind the glamour, the story was filled with darkness: handcuffs, courtrooms, cold concrete cells. How could Hollywood's brightest actresses fall from luxurious mansions to prison bars? Was it arrogance, addiction, or a system willing to build idols only to witness their downfall? From names the world once knew to faces now forgotten, they once dominated the red carpet and movie posters. But in the end, designer dresses are just a memory, giving way to cold orange jumpsuits. Some fought to the end with the law but failed. Others thought their fame would protect them, until reality struck more cruelly than any script. When the glamour turns into disaster, this is the dark side of Hollywood, a place where even the seemingly invincible can fall. Michelle Rodriguez, Hollywood's wildfire. Michelle Rodriguez always radiates raw, fearless energy, a strength that makes her perfect for the Fast and Furious franchise and any role requiring explosive performance. She's not the fragile Hollywood star. She's a rebel, a warrior, a woman for whom toughness comes easily. But off-screen, that very wildness sometimes blends into chaos. Her troubles with the law began when she was repeatedly arrested for drunk driving and probation violations. A manifestation of a deep internal struggle, a kind of self-destructive behavior that fame often hides behind its glamour. In the mid-2000s, Michelle was sentenced to prison, a short but symbolic sentence. Hollywood's tough girl found herself on the other side of the system for the first time. Unlike many other stars who hide behind PR teams, Michelle confronted her mistakes head-on. She admits to having problems with anger and dangerous desires, traits that made her captivating on screen, but also destructive in real life. Her time in prison forced her to confront these feelings, to realize how fragile freedom is. Upon her release, she returned stronger. Hollywood welcomed her, but her reputation had changed. Michelle is not just an actress, she is a survivor. Her time in prison didn't end her career. It forged her, stripped away her illusions of fame, and left her with courage. Today, Rodriguez still walks the fine line between boldness and self-control, but her eyes now reflect the wisdom of someone who was once imprisoned and doesn't want to go back. The prison sentence may have been short, but the lessons are lifelong experiences. Michelle's fire didn't die out. She learned to control it. Paris Hilton, from icon of luxury to awakening. Before reality TV and influencer culture took over, Paris Hilton was fame itself. A viral headline, a fleeting illusion, she was the first celebrity thanks to her diamond-encrusted phone and her catchphrase, "sexy." Paris built an empire on glamour and extravagance. But behind the glitz and high fashion lay a double life: chaotic nights, reckless driving, and disregard for the law. By the mid-2000s, that party lifestyle caught up with her. After numerous traffic violations and disregard for probation, Paris was sentenced to prison. The image of her, the high society woman, the pop culture princess, being led away in handcuffs became a surreal moment in the history of modern celebrity. The world that once adored her now witnessed Paris weeping in prison, stripped of her makeup, her freedom, and her control. Her time in jail was only a few weeks, but it was a cultural earthquake. Tabloids swarmed her, critics called it justice for privilege, and Paris realized the character she had played all along, the shallow blonde heiress, had been broken, revealing a frightened young woman who had lost herself in her performance. After her release, Paris reinvented herself. She turned the experience into a lesson, speaking about trauma, reform school, and the mental damage caused by fame. She became an advocate for accountability and healing, something few expected from a social icon. Paris Hilton didn't just go to jail. She experienced a rebirth. The image of crime now became a symbol not of disgrace, but of awakening. Behind the diamonds and cameras, she learned that fame can steal peace, and now she is finding it again. Natasha Lyonne, from the abyss to the light on screen. Before Netflix turned Natasha Lyonne into a household name, in Orange is the New Black and Russian Doll, she was one of Hollywood's most promising yet troubled young stars of the late 90s. Breakthrough roles in American Pie and Slums of Beverly Hills heralded a brilliant and long-lasting career. But behind the wild allure and sharp wit lay a woman slowly falling apart. Addiction, illness, and a reckless lifestyle consumed her 20s. In the early 2000s, Natasha was evicted from her home, hospitalized, and eventually arrested after a series of incidents involving drugs and property damage. The dark side of the machine of fame, which once worshipped her, now proved harsh. The time in prison was short, but the torment lasted for years. Natasha describes it as a moment of rock bottom when she realized that talent or fame could not protect her from herself. She battled hepatitis, was nearly homeless and completely isolated before gradually beginning her journey back to sanity. When she finally reappeared, Natasha didn't hide her scars. She transformed them into art, raw humor and profound wisdom, becoming the foundation for her awakening. Orange is the New Black is not just a role, but therapy through acting. She transforms her past conviction into a symbol of survival. Natasha Lyonne's story proves that salvation isn't about forgetting the prison cell, but about accepting it. The woman who hit rock bottom built her second act on truth, resilience, and the determination to reject death in the way Hollywood expects. Reese Witherspoon. When the glamorous lawyer faces challenges off the spotlight. Reese Witherspoon was once the perfect symbol of Hollywood success, a Southern girl who rose to prominence through talent, discipline, and charm. From Legally Blonde to her Oscar-winning role in Walk the Line, she cultivated an image of elegance, intelligence, and national trust. Polite, hardworking, neat, she seemed unstoppable. But one late night in Atlanta, when her husband was pulled over by police for drunk driving, Reese's seemingly perfect world was shaken. Sitting in the passenger seat, she made a mistake confronting the police. Emotional, argumentative, defiant. And minutes later, America's most glamorous lawyer was handcuffed for disorderly conduct. The detention was short, but the consequences were profound. The glamorous image vanished, replaced by the power of ego and vulnerability to the pressures of fame. Reese publicly apologized, admitting to her shameful behavior, and promised to learn from her mistakes. Hollywood always loves comebacks, and Reese was given a second chance. But that night left its mark. She became more humble, more cautious in her public interactions, and fiercely defended her image. Reese's story isn't about crime, but about humanity. Even someone as composed as her can lose control in an instant. But what matters is how you stand up. Face the lights and cameras when people see you at your worst. Shelley Duvall, a lost muse in Hollywood's shadows. Shelley Duvall, a fragile yet haunting actress, has delivered unforgettable images on screen. From The Shining to Popeye, she embodied characters teetering on the edge of fear and innocence, captivating and haunting audiences. But behind the camera, Shelley herself was drifting toward that same precipice. The pressures of Hollywood, years of emotional isolation, and personal breakdowns pulled her away from reality. Shelley's decline wasn't sensational, headline-grabbing, or wild partying. It was quieter, sadder, and more profound. In the 2000s, Texas police arrested her for strange behavior, disturbing the peace and disorientation. Shelley wasn't violent, nor had she committed serious crimes. She was simply a woman slowly falling from the world that the industry had once surrounded her. As soon as she was arrested, tabloids were quick to turn her pain into a sensational story. The image of the muse of The Shining in her fragile mental state haunted Hollywood. It forced people to acknowledge the cruelty the industry could inflict on those they once celebrated. Shelley Duvall had once been an icon of sophistication, intelligence, and uniqueness. But when she needed sympathy, she only received ridicule. Years later, when she reappeared in interviews, her memories were fragmented, but the tenderness remained. Shelley spoke of loneliness, pain, and a longing for safety. Her arrest wasn't for a crime, but a testament to the collapse of a mind pushed too far by fame. Her time in captivity became one of Hollywood's quietest tragedies, where she wasn't imprisoned by bars, but by invisible walls built by an industry that had forgotten who it was breaking. Winona Ryder. When the Gothic Queen Meets the Abyss. In the 90s, Winona Ryder was untouchable. She was the Gothic queen of coolness, the fragile beauty in Edward Scissorhands, and the voice of outsiders yearning for recognition. Intelligent, mysterious, seductive. That image made her a Hollywood icon. But one winter afternoon in Beverly Hills, that image shattered. Surveillance cameras caught her leaving Saks Fifth Avenue with thousands of dollars worth of unpaid clothing. Just hours later, the news broke. Winona Ryder was arrested for shoplifting. It wasn't the crime itself that shocked, but its absurdity. A millionaire actress shoplifting. To many, it was self-destructive. To others, it was a cry for help. In court, Ryder was pale, devastated, a far cry from her former poetic heroine. Tabloids nicknamed her Winona Swipe, and directors quietly removed her from cast lists. She received a probationary sentence, community service, and mandatory counseling. But behind the headlines lay a more complex truth. Ryder was emotionally exhausted, on medication, and lost after years in the Hollywood machine. This wasn't greed, but a sign of burnout, of the pressure and loneliness that fame couldn't mask. Fame doesn't protect you from loneliness, anxiety, or the need to feel alive. Over time, Winona rebuilt her life. Her return in Stranger Things wasn't just a comeback, it was a rebirth. She didn't erase the past, but embraced it. The crime scene from 2 decades ago still haunts her, a haunting reminder that even the most beloved stars can crumble under an invisible weight. Winona Ryder never served time in prison, but her sentence was years of exile from the world that once adored her. When she finally returned, she didn't appear as a perfect icon, but as living proof that brokenness doesn't mean failure. Shailene Woodley, courageously standing up for her beliefs. Shailene Woodley was never a typical Hollywood star. While many others were preoccupied with fame and glamour, she found joy in barefoot hiking, fighting for the planet, and rejecting the materialistic lifestyle that dominated her peers. She was a living embodiment of a conscious, profound, and authentic life. Therefore, when news of her arrest spread, the world was stunned. In 2016, Shailene was arrested during a peaceful protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline, an act of standing up to protect the environment and indigenous communities. Cameras captured her being handcuffed and led away. Not the image of a rebel, but a testament to courage. The legal system didn't care about the noble cause. She was charged with trespassing and served a short prison sentence. But for Shailene, it was a badge of honor. "I was just one of hundreds who stood up," she said, refusing to let the experience silence her. Her brief time in jail changed her perspective on justice and injustice. While Hollywood viewed it as a controversy, Shailene called it truth. She risked her life for the truth. For others, a rare act in a town obsessed with image and fame. While many stars protect their image at all costs, Shailene Woodley proves that integrity sometimes comes with handcuffs, and that is the true power of her story. Martha Stewart, the queen of homemaking, who turned crime into power. Martha Stewart is more than just a celebrity, she's an empire, the queen of perfection. From nothing, she built a multi-million-dollar brand, teaching Americans how to live beautifully, decorate meals, and control every little detail of life. The name Martha Stewart is synonymous with success, taste, and power. Every dinner she hosted, every magazine cover she appeared on, reinforced her image of triumph. And then, no Hollywood screenwriter could have imagined the ultimate symbol of American order and elegance being thrown into prison for a white-collar crime. In the early 2000s, she was convicted of obstructing justice and lying to investigators in an insider trading case. It wasn't the crime that shocked the world, but the person who committed it. Martha Stewart, who had taught millions how to fold napkins and decorate cakes, suddenly found herself in a prison uniform. The tabloids went wild, calling it the fall of the goddess of homemaking. Cameras lurked outside the prison as if it were the Oscars. Inside, Martha remained calm, even teaching cooking to the inmates. Her sentence lasted only 5 months, but it rewrote her entire legacy. When she was released, the world saw not just a lifestyle icon anymore. They saw a survivor. She lost millions of dollars but gained something even more powerful, authenticity. Martha embraced her past, told her prison story with humor, rebranded, co-hosted a show with Snoop Dogg, and launched new products. The scandal couldn't erase her skill and power. Martha Stewart's story is the perfect Hollywood paradox, from queen of class to prisoner, but somehow turning the fall into a master class of reinvention. Prison didn't destroy her. Instead, it crowned her a queen, restoring her to the pinnacle of American fame. Fame can build and destroy empires in the blink of an eye, but Martha proved that true strength lies in rising from the fall. Amanda Bynes, the young comedy angel, crushed by Hollywood. Amanda Bynes was once Hollywood's most promising young comedian. A Nickelodeon prodigy, from Amanda's Show to She's the Man, she seemed unstoppable. Her rare blend of innocence and wit endeared her to both audiences and critics. But behind that laughter, a silent storm was brewing. The pressures of fame, mental illness, and substance abuse collided, creating one of Hollywood's most tragic crises of her generation. In her early 20s, Amanda's life became a public breakdown. Bizarre tweets, erratic behavior, legal troubles, all transformed her from a rising star into a tabloid nightmare. She was arrested for drunk driving, reckless driving, and even throwing marijuana out of her apartment window. Each incident became a viral headline overnight. The once bright girl who made millions laugh is now mocked and vilified. At her worst, Amanda was admitted to a psychiatric facility, with her parents controlling her life through guardianship. The brief stints in jail and rehabilitation centers were accompanied by the same question: what happened to Amanda Bynes? The answer isn't failure or fame, it's fragility. Hollywood devours child stars, then shocks them when they fall apart. Years later, Amanda sought to rebuild her identity beyond acting. She studied fashion, focused on recovery, and shared her struggles authentically. But the scars from her breakdown, the crime photos, the newspaper headlines, the ridicule, still haunt her like ghosts. Amanda Bynes' story is heartbreaking because it's not just about one crime. It's about a system that rewards youth until it destroys them. And though time behind bars may be short, the real prison is reputation. The kind of reputation that never lets go of you. Farrah Fawcett, when the American Angel touched the darkness. Farrah Fawcett was more than just a television icon. She was the face of an era. With her famous red swimsuit poster and radiant smile, Farrah embodied an unparalleled American glamour. But behind the perfect image, she harbored an unsettled soul and a rebellious spirit, refusing to conform to the strict rules of Hollywood. That very fire propelled her to stardom, but also led her into the darkest chapters of her life, including a brief but shocking encounter with the law. Shortly after Charlie's Angels propelled her to global fame, Farrah's personal life began to crumble. Her tumultuous relationship with Ryan O'Neal, filled with public arguments and emotional turmoil, gradually pushed her to the moment that shattered her angelic reputation: an arrest for assault following a fight. Although the incident was minor legally, the idea that America's sweetheart could be handcuffed shocked the public. Farrah didn't spend long in jail, but the candid photo of her handcuff became a media obsession. It wasn't the crime that defined her, but how the world reacted to the shattering of her perfection. Overnight, the angelic Farrah became human, flawed, emotional, vulnerable. And that's what makes her story unforgettable. The press called her unstable, but the truth is far more complex. Farrah struggled to gain control of her image, her career, and herself. Hollywood turned her into an icon, not a person, and when she relinquished some of that power, scandal ensued. In her later years, she faced cancer with extraordinary courage, transforming her pain into action. But even in the end, the world cannot forget that fleeting moment of rebellion, the night the golden girl of the 70s found herself on the other side of prison bars. It wasn't the end of Farrah's story, but a legendary moment. Perfection was finally shattered. Taryn Manning, when life mimics art. Taryn Manning, an actress with raw energy, is an artist who can switch from glamorous to chaotic in the blink of an eye. Audiences know her from 8 Mile, Hustle and Flow, and the series Orange is the New Black, where she ironically embodies a troubled prisoner. But as fame grew, life began to mimic art in ways she never imagined. The actress, who had portrayed unstable and rebellious characters on screen, soon realized the darkness awaited her in real life. She candidly shared about her battles with mental health and alcohol, but the press didn't spare her. Assault, public fights, restraining orders, multiple arrests for erratic behavior. Her life became a whirlwind of court cases, criminal photos, and a series of breakdowns. When imprisoned, Taryn Manning, who had once played a prisoner, lived the role authentically, almost symbolically. Prison was not just a punishment, but also a mirror, seeing herself and the loneliness behind the glamour. In later interviews, she admitted to feeling lost and angry, that fame isolated her more than it liberated her. "People love you when you're broken," she once said, "but they don't know how to help you heal." After her release, Taryn sought to rebuild her career through music and small roles, but controversy continued to plague her. Hollywood had changed, but she never truly escaped its grip. Taryn Manning's story blurs the lines between fiction and reality, between success and self-destruction. Her time in prison wasn't the end, but the moment of clearest truth. Behind the chaos was a woman screaming to be seen not as a character or a scandal, but as a soul struggling to survive amidst fame that consumed her. Lindsay Lohan, from Hollywood princess to fallen icon. There was a time when Lindsay Lohan reigned supreme in Hollywood. From her breakthrough role in The Parent Trap to her cultural icon in Mean Girls, she embodied talent, beauty, and early fame. A child star seemingly destined for legend. But that fairy tale didn't last. Fame came too soon, the spotlight too bright. Soon, Lindsay's name was no longer on movie posters. Instead, it was on crime pictures. The downfall began with a series of arrests: drunk driving, reckless driving, probation violations. The joy of partying became a tragic portrait of a young star, unable to escape her demons. Hollywood witnessed her in and out of rehab, courtrooms, and even the Los Angeles County Jail. For someone who once earned millions of dollars per film, her biggest challenge now is simply living freely. But Lindsay's story isn't just about rebellion. It's also a haunting tale of Hollywood, where every young woman's misstep becomes headline news, every relapse a public spectacle. When she finished her short prison sentence, the industry that once adored her replaced her with newer faces. Years later, Lindsay tried to rebuild her image. Reality TV, small roles, business ventures in Europe. But the shadow of the past never disappeared. Her criminal record, public humiliation, and lost legacy followed her. Her time in prison was short, but the punishment and the warning she left behind lasted. Lindsay Lohan didn't just go to jail. She became chilling proof that, in Hollywood, even the Golden Girls can fall and plummet straight to the cold floor of prison. Loughlin. When Aunt Becky became a federal defendant. For years, Loughlin was America's darling, the elegant face, the bright smile of Full House, an icon of perfection. To millions, she embodied everything clean, friendly, and proper. But behind that glamour, a simmering secret awaited its eruption. In the shocking college admissions scandal, Loughlin and her husband were accused of spending enormous sums of money to secure their daughter's admission to a prestigious school. While not a violent crime, the incident rocked public opinion. The image of privilege, power, and systemic deception was starkly revealed. When the FBI arrested them, the entire nation exclaimed, "Aunt Becky is now a federal defendant." For someone who had cultivated such a graceful and respectable image, Loughlin walking into court in a pristine white suit was unbelievable. Her downfall wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, humble, yet profoundly heartbreaking. Ultimately, Loughlin received a short prison sentence, but the damage was lasting. Hollywood gradually turned its back on her. Advertising contracts vanished. Her reputation and the image she had built over the years were irreparably shattered. In prison, she lived a secluded life, reading, praying, and reflecting on the choices that had distanced her from the world she once represented. Lori Loughlin's story isn't about violence or addiction. It's about illusion, believing that fame and money can buy anything, even integrity. When that illusion shattered, Hollywood exposed a dark truth. Even its angels can become a warning sign in an instant. Heather Locklear. When a radiant smile meets darkness. For decades, Heather Locklear was the perfect image on television. With her golden blonde hair and natural beauty, she dominated prime time with shows like Melrose Place and Dynasty. Heather had it all: talent, charm, and an unforgettable public image. But behind that captivating smile, Heather was silently consumed by addiction, anger, and self-destructive behavior. Things that fame couldn't hide forever. Trouble began with multiple arrests related to family disputes, drunk driving, and even clashes with police in her own home. Each article, each photograph, eroded the perfect image she had painstakingly built. The public only saw her puffy eyes, smudged makeup, and thought Heather had become another fallen star. But the truth was even darker. She was battling deep emotional pain and dependence on prescription drugs. In and out of rehab, Heather struggled to confront her demons, but they clung to her. When she was finally sentenced to prison, it wasn't the collapse of a diva, but the collapse of a woman who had lived happily for decades. Her short time in prison was followed by numerous treatments, numerous recovery efforts, and gradually she faded from the spotlight. Hollywood turned its back, but fans still hoped for her return. That vulnerability made Heather human. In the end, she found moments of peace, away from fame, away from chaos. Heather Lear's story is a haunting reminder that the brightest smiles can hide the deepest pain. And sometimes, the prison door doesn't just close after a crime, it closes after years of silent suffering. These women once dominated the screen, admired by millions. But behind the glamour lay choices, chaos, and consequences. Some succumbed to addiction, others lost themselves in arrogance, and some became symbols of courage. Time behind bars stripped away the glitz and glamour, leaving only one thing behind: the truth. Ultimately, the story isn't about guilt or innocence. It's about humanity, about how people rise from failure, learn, and grow. Hollywood may forget its fallen stars, but the world doesn't. Because in this town, the brightest spotlight always shines before it fades. And it is in that moment that the truth about humanity is revealed.